reparations, that's when reparations breaks down, because it wasn't just white people. It wasn't. The white people didn't go into those tribes to get those folks. They gave those Ghanaians and those Nigerians guns and rifles, cannons, and they sent them into the jungle. And those people got bows and arrows. They don't have any technology like that. And they gave them rum, and they gave them white girls out the prisons. I'm telling you what they were doing. They emptied out those prisons of those white girls and gave them those to them kings. That's what they want. So here, take this. We don't want her, you know, and give us some of that gold land on the ground. You know, Ghana had gold land on the ground. They didn't know what it was. It wasn't nothing to them. You know, they couldn't spend it. But when they started bringing in sugar, the triangular slave trade meant the boat always had something on it, you know. So they would ship it to England, you know. Sugar cane, all those things that they were growing, cotton, that goes to England. Then England would ship stuff down to Africa. Then the Africans would put slaves on the boat. Send it that way. You see what I'm saying? It's called the triangular slave trade. They weren't shipping slaves to England, but they would fill that same boat with other goods and textiles, skins from bison and buffalo. Load them up.
So what was the purpose of the first slaves? Like how did, like when it first started in 1619, when they first came to America, like what was, England was behind it all? What was the deal with that?
It wasn't England.
Okay.
1619 was the Dutch.
Okay.
I used to work with Dutch people, you know. Sam is Dutch. You know that Dutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we come out of I work with the Christian Reform.
Right.
So, but I mean, that's over with. But they were the first settlers to New York, 1619. And the Reformed Church of America has the oldest churches going back to the 16th century, Chris, because they were the first settlers into the States, and they started the slave trade.
So when
the Brits got in on it, but all of those colonies got in on it eventually, but the first ones, the early ones. Now, slave trade, really, that's slave trade to the U.S., but slavery and trafficking in slaves was started with the Portuguese. They were the first ones to go down to Africa. They learned about Columbus in 1492, but in 1454, they were already going, the Portuguese were going, and they were bringing them back and using them, you know, in Europe, in their context. There were blacks in Europe too, you know that.
Yes.
But there wasn't a lot of them, but they were brought back in. Some of them assimilated.
Something that Dr. Hampshire brought up yesterday was that he's pretty dogmatic about this topic. But we should be thanking America because America stopped slavery worldwide. So yes, we had American slavery, but when we abolished slavery, when we stopped slavery, hypothetically or characteristically.
Well, I hate to disagree with him, but
I don't know if that's exactly what his point was, but can you speak on that at all? Like when we stopped slavery, what did it do for the world?
Okay, the Brits stopped first.
So 1875 was
No.
Abraham Lincoln.
1840.
Okay, the Brits did.
Great Britain stopped first.
Okay.
So that's William Wilberforce. So you got to read about Wilberforce and how he got in on the inside and brought that to a stop. And he also stopped children working in mines. They built coal mines with tunnels this big because the Irish orphans were the ones that worked in it, not Refrigerator Perry. Irish orphans.
Right.
And so that was totally exploitation. But that's Christian influence, real Christian influence, to abolish slavery. He got the kids thing first, and then he did that. America was second, but when America stopped in 1865.
75.
No,
Was it
65.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, but Brazil continued to have slaves all the way into the 1880s, and the Dutch provided them. Okay, so Sam needs to know that. If he didn't know it, he needs to ask.
I'm sure he knows.
He needs to ask Claude Mariottini, because Claude Mariottini comes from Brazil and he knows the truth. But those slaves in Brazil were brought in by the Dutch. All of that Guyana, all of that northern, those were Dutch colonies. Like Guyana, you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah. This is where what's his name that set up his commune there. Anyway.
So when Abraham Lincoln finally stopped slavery, how was that received? That's when the American Baptists broke off from the Southern Baptists. Like as far as that, when
the American Baptists broke off from the Southern Baptists.
Yeah, how did that
when
happen?
the Civil War started.
Okay.
So that's it. I mean,
and
they were enemies. They were fighting soldiers on opposite sides, and theologically they were on opposite sides.
And so was that the official time when the Southern Baptists were started? Right then, from the American Baptists? Like I'm just trying to find out.
Oh well, you got to read Southern Baptist history to.
But it's pretty much around that time. That was the
over that issue.
That was the main issue.
They always had their regional differences, but it was considered. Well, let me take that back. They still, even after the Civil War ended, I think they still attempted to have some unified. And the reason I know is because the librarian for Northern Seminary, her name was Betsy Dunbar. She left Northern Seminary and went to Andover, Newton, which is where the ABC records are kept. Okay. And she said, we were just talking on the phone because we knew each other. And she says, Bob, you need to come here because I could show you something and you could write a book about it. I says, what is it? She says, I have the church records of Southern Baptist churches, the churches in the South. She says that she's got minutes, the church minutes and the church bulletins and announcements. And in the bulletins, in the announcements, they would have hanging today, lynching today after church.